It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
These findings suggest you're not going to know very much about who you'd be happy with by knowing all of the details in the world about that potential date. You're going to learn the most about a possible fit between you and another person by what you actually experience with that person.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Every now and again I come across some research, Kylie, that is so exciting that I can't wait for the doctor's desk. It's so exciting. Like, you know when I read something and just go, oh, that is so good. Today we're doing it. Today we're going to talk about our intimate relationship, the spousal or partnered relationship between two adults and how we can make it stronger based on a groundbreaking study using 43 major data sets and what it tells us about relationship satisfaction. I'm so excited about this research.
You know how I usually feel about research, but
Yes.
I actually have really enjoyed reading over this and talking about it with you.
Okay, so here's the deal. Do you want me to just tell you about the study and we'll go, or do you want to sort of do you have questions about it from the outset? How do you want to do this?
No, I think you start sharing.
Okay, so this is a new and massive study by two researchers, Samantha Joel and Paul Eastwick. And what they've done is they've grabbed 43 data sets. So this is a big study to answer a question about what factors are most strongly associated with relationship satisfaction. So how satisfied are you in our relationship is essentially the question that they're asking. And what I love, so there's about 84 researchers that are involved in this because they've gone out to so many different people. It's an incredible team job.
They utilised over 11,000 couples.
Yeah, it's a really big data set.
This is a big study.
And what they've done as well is they've used a really deeply sophisticated form of statistical analysis that just didn't used to exist. They're using deep learning, a whole lot of computer learning, lots and lots and lots of calculations going on. And as they've gone through this, what they've essentially done is they've removed the possibility for bias that so many researchers end up bringing into their research. It's just, I don't even fully understand everything that they've done. This is well beyond anything that I learned at university. But the level of statistical power and the level of statistical depth that's gone into this, I think is just extraordinary. This is one of the best studies that I've ever come across. So what did it find? Number one, if you want to have a high level of relationship satisfaction in your relationship, the researchers have basically said that the main takeaway from the study, it's not who you're with, it's the dynamic that you have with them. So it doesn't matter about the person's personal attributes, their characteristics. It's actually about the relationship that you have with them that determines, to a very, very large extent, the extent to which you're happy and satisfied in that relationship.
When you read that to me earlier, what stood out to me the most was how many times you and I have had a conversation about different people that we know and gone,
oh, you're making us sound, no, don't say that. You're going to make us sound judgy. We would never do that.
No, but just how did those two end up together?
That's what I just...
They're so different. And in some cases, you've got this ridiculously sweet woman with this very abrupt, kind of straight down the line guy. And you think, how does this work?
Or vice versa. I remember on one of our first dates, we're driving along through East Gosford and we've pulled up at a set of lights and you and I were just talking away like crazy. And I don't know if you remember this incident or not, but I looked at you and then I looked at the people in the car beside us also stopped at the lights. Do you remember what happened?
Yeah.
I can't believe you remember it. What did I say? What happened?
You said, I can't imagine being in a car and not having something to say. To the person next to me.
Because they were just sitting in silence. They're both staring out the window, the driver. They were a young couple. He's just staring out the front and she's staring out the passenger window like, I'd rather be anywhere else. And I was like, really? Now some people, they would hear that and they'd think, no, that's bliss. That's perfect.
If you see us in a car and we're not talking, it's because I'm cranky at him.
Yeah, pretty much. But
she might have been cranky at him.
But what matters is the dynamic between them, the dynamic. And so if they're both satisfied with the dynamic, regardless of the individual characteristics, the personality differences that they have, they're not entirely, but they're almost irrelevant compared to the quality of the dynamic, the way that they interact. So what these two researchers essentially said is this: relationship-specific variables are about 2 to 3 times as predictive as individual differences. And Samantha Joel adds, she says this, and I quote, which I think would fit many people's intuitions. But the surprising part is that once you have all the relationship-specific data in hand, the individual differences fade into the background. So I think the easiest way to describe this is for me to share something that one of my favorite researchers, a guy called Scott Stanley, who has a brilliant Twitter account and website called Decide or Slide. And he said, this is what it's actually like. Suppose you're using an online dating service. You're looking at a lot of profiles and pictures of potential partners. These findings suggest you're not going to know very much about who you'd be happy with by knowing all of the details in the world about that potential date. As Joel has argued so well, you're going to learn the most about a possible fit between you and another person by what you actually experience with that person. And that's why dating apps, that's my I'm not a fan of dating apps. I know that they can work. I know some people find love. That's great. But you don't find love until you have the dynamic, until you have the interaction. Checking a whole list of boxes, not nearly as valuable as having the interpersonal connection, looking in that person's eyes and seeing the spark, feeling the smile, feeling the warmth fill your chest because, oh my goodness, the dynamic is just electric.
I don't think I'm the only one who's had the experience where everyone's told you you've got to go and meet that person. They're amazing. And they give you all of the reasons why this person's going to be your next best friend or your boyfriend or whatever it is. And you meet them and you're kind of going, what's everyone so excited about? And again, it comes down to that dynamic.
Yeah.
What I bring to the relationship and what that person brings to the relationship just doesn't gel. That doesn't mean that either of us are a bad person. It just means that the dynamic that we bring just doesn't fit.
Too right. So ask me what mattered most.
What mattered most,
I'm so
Dr.
glad you
Coulson?
asked. What a great question. So across everything that was studied, the top five variables that explained the most variance for both present satisfaction and future relationship satisfaction were these. Number one, perceived partner commitment. That ranked at the top of the list. I love that this is at the top of the list. So it's kind of like me being asked, how much do you, Justin, think that Kylie is committed to the relationship? It doesn't matter how committed you actually are. What matters is my perception of your level of commitment. See, when I think about you and the way that you're committed to our relationship and our family, there's no question, there's no doubt in my mind. It's 100%. It's just you're committed, full stop, end of story. And therefore, one of the main reasons that I can be completely satisfied in our relationship is I know that you're committed. I know it. My perception of your level of commitment to me and to our relationship is sky high. And hopefully you'd say the same thing in reverse. Hopefully. You'd say the same thing in reverse. Hopefully.
Am I leaving you hanging?
The second thing is appreciation. Feeling like you really appreciate your spouse or partner. That's the second biggest indicator of present and future satisfaction. So when somebody can look at you and say, I appreciate you so much. I recognize what you do. I'm so grateful for you. When you know that you're appreciated, when there's that high level of gratitude in your relationship, oh my goodness, what it does for your relationship satisfaction is it's enormous. The third one, you might want to fast forward the next 30 seconds if you've got little kids in the car. This little bit will be will not be for sensitive or immature or young ears. The third contributor to present and future relationship satisfaction is the level of sexual satisfaction that you have, the quality of an intimate relationship. What are you smiling at?
Well, what I love about this is it's not top of the list. And so often our conversations would suggest that that's what people put a huge emphasis on. But the reality is that without that perceived partner commitment and the appreciation, sexual satisfaction is at an all-time low.
It's going to be lower. That's right. So that actually fits there really beautifully because these other two variables are in place. So number one, perceived partner commitment. Number two, appreciation. Number three, feeling satisfied when things get a little bit steamy. Number four, perceived partner satisfaction. So again, this isn't about the attributes that I'm bringing or that you're bringing to a relationship. Rather, it's my perception of how satisfied you are in the relationship. And this is why we feel so good in our relationships. When I look at you and I get to say, I know that my wife loves the fact that she's married to me. I have this sense of predictability, this sense of security, this sense of safety in the relationship. I feel like I'm doing a good job as a husband. That's why things were so bad early on in our marriage, because I was doing a lousy job. But over time, I feel better about it. And presumably you feel as good about being in the relationship with me as I think you feel about being in the relationship.
You are so funny.
I'm fishing a little
when
bit.
I look at this list though,
Yep.
what I see, if you were to kind of culminate it all
Yep.
into one word, it's about building a relationship of trust.
That's not one word. Building a relationship.
Oh,
that's
trust.
5 words.
Trust.
Oh, trust. Okay, trust. Yeah.
Let's just go with trust.
Yep, sure.
If I trust that you're committed to me, and if I trust that there's this level of appreciation for the things that I do, I'm able to be my authentic self with you.
Mm-hmm.
In the bedroom, outside the bedroom, I can be that person because I have a high level of trust in the relationship. And that follows through into the level of satisfaction that I see in you or you see in me as a result of the relationship that's built on trust.
One of the critical things about what you've said and what this research shows is that relationship satisfaction is actually often not about the relationship. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's actually about what's going on inside your head.
Yeah.
So my perception of what's happening for you, my perception of how satisfied you are, my perception of how committed you are, that is the biggest indicator of how satisfied I am. And vice versa. The degree to which you believe that I'm committed and satisfied and grateful, that predicts how satisfied you are. Therefore, what this study really shows is that people project their own relationship perceptions and behaviors onto their relationship, onto their partner. And I think this is so important. This is a really, really critical thing for relationship well-being.
I think if you were to take out step number 3 and
so remove the intimacy aspect.
yeah, this actually plays out in just about all of our relationships.
Yeah, because trust is at the core, I think.
Yeah, but it's all about the perceived. That's the biggest word out of this whole thing. It's about our perception of what's going on for us and for them.
So as an addendum to this, as an additional level to this, Scott Stanley, who I mentioned before, Decide or Slide from Twitter and from the University of Denver, he and one of his colleagues, Galena Rhodes, have a whole lot of research that points to something else that I think is really fascinating here, and that is when it comes to leading up to marriage, just the perception that your soon-to-be marriage partner is less committed than you are, even a little bit, is one of the biggest predictors of unhappiness in marriage. I think that's enormous. And so what we're talking about here is this thing called asymmetrical commitment. It's when we've got different levels of commitment on either side of the partnership. If you want to have a great relationship, understand what it means to be committed. Understand what your expectations are to demonstrate commitment. I mean, we talked on Friday, Kylie, about how, in I'll Do Better Tomorrow, how last Monday my level of commitment to Halloween was lower than my level of commitment to getting my bike fixed. But that doesn't lead you to question my commitment to you or to our family or to our relationship. You just recognize that my values aren't the same as yours. And while you were doing all the hard work during the day, you knew that I was going to be there and do it in the afternoon. I was still committed, but there were other priorities and other factors that were impacting our day. You're looking at me strangely like maybe you questioned my commitment last Monday.
Not at all. I was actually going to suggest that I did give you a bit of a hard time on Friday, but the reality was I continue to love the dynamic that you and I have. Decorating is actually something that I really enjoy doing, and I
hate it.
I get a lot of joy out of doing it.
Yeah.
But I also had an afternoon of ferrying kids to and from activities, and I wasn't actually sure how we were going to do it. We just knew we wanted to do it, and we wanted to be part of a community. And you were able to come in and just take over and do such an amazing job. And the fact that we had so many people show up, everybody said that ours was the house to be at, even with our 3 rubbish bins.
If you missed the story and you're only just catching up with this podcast, go back and listen to I'll Do Better Tomorrow on Friday, a couple of days ago, because you'll get the whole story there. I think we need to move to a take-home message out of this study, though, because it really is so important. What we're talking about here is if you want to have high levels of relationship satisfaction, work on the dynamic between the two of you. I mean, we're assuming that because you're in a family context, you're probably not dating. It's probably not young adulthood for people who are listening to this podcast. So if you're in a couple relationship and you want to make your relationship stronger, to make it as good as you can, don't worry about personality differences. Don't worry about education differences. Don't worry about political differences. Don't even worry about parenting differences. Focus instead on what you can do to make the dynamic between the two of you as good as it can be. And that might mean looking for different ways that you can listen better or be more emotionally supportive or just smile more or joke around, have fun, find the way to interact and engage with your marriage partner or your life partner in a way that satisfies them and puts their mind at ease, that shows them that you are satisfied in the relationship and that you are committed to the relationship and that you're grateful. Do those things. Watch what happens to the relationship.
I think the only thing that I would add to this conversation is, in my personal experience, what I have recognized in myself over the years is that often my perception is very skewed, and it's skewed because of my own personal experiences as a child and growing up in a totally different environment and family value system.
Yep.
Coming into our family situation, recognizing that I brought a lot of baggage into the relationship, and as a result, actually labeled you with a lot of those things that carried over from my birth family. And yet you were so far removed from that personal history of my own.
Yeah.
And it's taken you and I years to kind of work through the dynamic that has created.
Not just years of intentional effort, years of really trying to modify, adjust that dynamic so that it feels good for both of us. I love the dynamic between the two of us. So we really hope that this has been a useful podcast for you if you want to strengthen your relationship with your significant other. We will link to that study if you're inclined to have a look at the science behind it, as well as some of the other research we've talked about in today's podcast in our show notes. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. And if you'd like more info to make your family happier, please join us at happyfamilies.com.au.